Good morning, Justin. I'm very happy to back British farming. Today's publication of the Agriculture Bill, I think, will give British farmers a range of new opportunities. We already know that they're the best in the world. We know that we produce the highest quality food in the world here in the United Kingdom. I think the legislation that we introduced today will give British farmers a new platform to produce more, to sell more, to export more, and at the same time it will also reward them for the work they do in order to make sure that our countryside is green and beautiful.
And on that, is the reward structure going to be different so that the stress is on the green and beautiful rather more than it was?
Well, we want to make sure that people who haven't been properly rewarded for the work they do in the environment are properly rewarded in the future. When we consulted on a replacement for the Common Agricultural Policy, there was no one, literally no one, who said that the status quo was right. It's neither economically efficient, because it means that resources are tied up in land prices rather than being used to improve productivity, but it's also the case that we're not really giving people the support that they need in order to enhance the environment. And I think there's sometimes a tension that some attempt to erect between the two. But one of Minette's predecessors made the point to me, and I think this is a very resonant one, that farmers are the original friends of the earth. No one knows more about and cares more about soil health or air quality or making sure that we can maintain fertility and richness in the future than farmers. But in the past, the mechanisms that have been designed by the European Union haven't given them the support and the technology that they need in order to do everything that they want.
Except they have given them some assurance of income. Are you giving them the same assurance?
Well, yes, we've guaranteed that the amount overall that will go to farming in cash terms will remain the same right up until the next year.
And to farmers?
Yes, and one of the critical things about that is that that's actually a more generous guarantee, quite rightly, than any other EU nation is yet capable of giving its farmers. More than that, in the bill today, we outline a 7-year transition period in order to ensure that we can help farmers to make the transition from the existing system to the new one. Because we recognise, of course, that we're asking farmers to accept change, but we also want to ensure that we work with them. So the new ways of distributing money will be co-designed with farmers. The key theme is cooperation, making sure that we in government work with those who are responsible for managing the land, who have the expertise and the experience to make sure that we can deploy the technology required in order to improve productivity, but critically also, we can help them in the work that they want to do to provide and to enhance habitats for wildlife, to make sure that, for example, we can plant the trees that we need for both carbon sequestration and also to better manage our rivers.
Is there going to be a fall in the value of farmland?
Well, I think what we will see is a more effective market. And one of the things
is there going to be a fall in the value?
Well, I think one of the critical things is that I can't predict at this stage exactly what's going to happen to the value of agricultural land, because
some farmers think the value of land will fall, not necessarily a bad
thing. I think what you're going to see is an opportunity for some farmers, as a result of the provisions that we're introducing, to choose to take some of the money that we are making available and to invest it in technology. And what we will see is that as a result of allowing people to wrap up the next 7 years of payments, we will see some people who may choose voluntarily to exit farming and to allow new entrants in. But I think it's too soon to say what the value of or the price of farmland will be this far out.
Another question, which is really a yes or no. Are we going to see an end to live animal exports?
We're going to see restrictions on live animal exports, certainly, and we're consulting at the moment.
At the beginning of the year, there was a consultation, was there? And we were told that you were minded to ban them. You are not banning them.
I'm minded to restrict them, yes, and I'm looking at the evidence to see how we can make appropriate or take
restrict
appropriate
them in
steps.
What way?
Well, this is what we're consulting on at the moment. We want to make sure
consultation. You had it in the early.
We're gathering evidence at the moment, and we want to make sure that we can do this in the right way, because we need to balance.
But you're
both.
No longer minded to ban it.
I'm minded to take every step we can in order to ensure that we restrict animal exports and that we safeguard animal welfare.
But not to ban them.
Well, all options
there will not be a ban.
All options are on the table,
including a ban.
All options
it is
are on the
still
table.
Possible, is it?
It is possible.
Let's turn to other. Well, in a sense, there's other things, but it's in a sense linked hugely to both this and what is going on in the noises off of our wider politics. The NAO report today about that Minette Batters mentioned about the possibility of a no-deal Brexit and what would happen. Judging by what the NAO say, and they say that you have made very good preparations in some areas, but what they say on vets and what they say say on vessels to protect our fisheries. Actually, in your sector, we are not in a position, are we, for a no-deal Brexit?
Well, you're absolutely right to say that the National Audit Office, with whom we've been working closely, have been very generous in saying that we've made very good progress across a whole range of issues in preparation for every eventuality. Now, they did the bulk of their work earlier this year, and they emphasised the need to step up preparations in particular areas. And since they did that analysis, we have been stepping up work in those areas.
Have you got enough vets? Could you, on that day next year, if we had no deal, would you be able to ensure that there wasn't food rotting, animals having to be destroyed by the side of the road?
Yes, we won't have food rotting or animals being destroyed by the side of the road. We do have an acceleration in the number of vets, and we do have steps that we're taking to ensure across the range of activities for which DEFRA is responsible that we're ready for any eventuality.
What do you say to those people who met last night, those Conservative MPs, about 50 of them, colleagues of yours, planning to challenge Theresa May, talking about her in the most brutal terms? What do you say to them?
I'd urge everyone to get behind the Prime Minister. I think she's doing a great job at the moment. It's critically important that we ensure that we get a good Brexit deal and then that we deliver on the will of the British people. My aim is to ensure that on the 29th of March of next year that we leave the European Union, take back control of the agriculture policy that under the European Union has not worked in the interests of British farmers or the British countryside, take back control of our fishing waters, leave the single market, leave the customs union, and also end free movement. These are what people voted for. These will be delivered if we ensure that we get behind the Prime Minister and we have an opportunity to ensure that that Brexit vote is honoured and that we, as a united government, deliver on the promise that we made to the British people.
Are you in listening mode when you think of those 50 or so who met last night and you think of what they said? Are you willing at all? Has the time for conversation with them finished?
I'm always happy to have a conversation with anyone. I'm always
and a conversation that leads
mode.
to compromise.
Well, I'm always in listening mode with anyone, but we have a clear plan. It's the only plan on the table to ensure that we can leave the single market and the customs union, and as I mentioned earlier, take back control of important areas of policy.
Is it the only plan on the table, though? Because there are also rumblings of possibly a transitional deal via a Norway situation where we stay involved with the single market, where we stay much closer to the European Union, and crucially that we still have freedom of movement, and that might be then a position that we could adopt on the way to something else. Does that remotely attract you?
Well, I believe that the proposals that we have at the moment are the right proposals. Norway is a wonderful country. I yield to no one in my admiration for it. But I don't believe that the proposition that you've put forward, which is going into the European Economic Area, staying in the single market, I don't believe that's right. I believe that what we need to do is to ensure that we're free of the restrictions and impositions that the single market imposes. And that's why I believe that the proposition that the Prime Minister put forward and that was agreed earlier this year is the right proposition. And it's striking, isn't it, that since the Prime Minister put forward that proposition, we've seen from a variety of European leaders increased optimism about the prospect of a deal.
50 of your own MPs meeting last night in what was a very open meeting in which they were plotting to get rid of Theresa May.
Well, Justin, I wasn't there, neither were you, so we rely on reports. The critical thing is...
There are verbatim reports on websites this morning, on the Spectator website, if you want to have a look at it. They're absolutely, the quotations are pretty extraordinary, actually.
Justin, there are always reports on websites, and indeed... For as long as you've been in journalism and I've been in politics, there are always people who want to write stories about leadership speculation. It's one of those things that is, like our weather, a feature of British life, really? Which some shrug off and others, just.
And are you shrugging it off?
Well, I think the critical thing is that we need to make sure that we have unity in the Conservative Party.
But there isn't unity in the Conservative Party.
Yes, we need to make sure that there is unity in the country behind the Prime Minister's proposition.
There is no unity in the Conservative Party, that's the point. And I wonder whether, from your point of view, whether it wouldn't be better for Theresa May to have this challenge and to win it.
No, I think that this is loose talk, as I mentioned before. You always have loose talk. The critical thing is to ensure that we deliver on that Brexit mandate. And I think that any diversion or any distraction from that mission means that our ability to ensure that the referendum mandate that we were given is delivered is undermined. And I want to ensure that we get a solid vote, which I'm sure we will, when the Prime Minister brings back the treaty.
Really?
She will
You think the
include
parliamentary
the
arithmetic
European Union.
can win you the Chequers deal?
I think that it's important that Parliament rallies behind the Prime Minister, and I'm sure that people will, when we get our eventual deal with the European Union, recognise that the right thing to do is to deliver on the mandate that we were given, and not to allow ourselves to be distracted by any of the noises off that you alluded to.
You once said of Boris Johnson he could not provide the leadership or build the team for the Conservative Party when you stood against him after initially backing him in the leadership election. Has anything that has happened recently changed your mind again?
Well, the Prime Minister is Theresa May. She's doing a brilliant job.
Has anything changed your mind about Boris Johnson?
Boris is a friend and colleague with whom I worked during his time in government as Foreign Secretary, and I enjoyed working with Boris. I have the highest regard for him.
Would you serve under him?
I'm serving under Theresa May, and I want her to carry on as Prime Minister for as long as possible.
Would you serve under him?
I know what you're trying to do, Justin. The one thing I would say is that
No, because some people have said they wouldn't. And it's interesting that you're not.
Indeed, and they're allowed to say whatever they like in response to your question. My point is that what you're attempting to do, and I quite understand it, it's a legitimate journalistic inquiry, is to generate another story. I'm saying...
No, I'm
Prime
just
Minister,
interested about whether you'd...
I know you're interested because you're a highly skilled and professional journalist. The point I make is that I have the highest regard for Boris. As I say, I think that he did a great job as Foreign Secretary. I'm sorry he's not in the government. I enjoy working with him. But at the moment, the Prime Minister is Theresa May. Speculation about anyone else, whether it was Boris or any other individual as Prime Minister, is a distraction from making sure that we support the Prime Minister in the job that she does. And as I say, there is a limitless market for distraction and diversion. But the really important thing is, if we want to ensure that there is a market for British food produce in the future, if we want to ensure there is a market for British goods abroad, then what we should not be doing is engaging in the marketplace of gossip. We should be engaging in getting behind the Prime Minister and making sure that the opportunities that we're talking about today, with a new agriculture bill and a new opening, both for British farmers and the British countryside, are supported. And I think that despite the squally weather to which you allude at Westminster, we will see the sunlit uplands before too long.
Michael Gove, thank you.